Welcome to The Other Storyteller, the podcast sparking conversation in the arts and media world. I'm Maria, a filmmaker, entrepreneur, and curious artist from Colombia, living in the UK and Canada. The world is full of stories of cultures, places, and people, and I want to meet the most inspiring artists and storytellers from across cultures to uncover the stories that become art. All right, so today we have a great guest, and I am really, really excited for you to meet him. So Braden has actually worked for NPC as well as Sony and Disney. And you might know that these are some of the huge post-production houses out there and media companies, but he's also a very eclectic artist, an artist that does everything from illustration, video, photography. And so we're really excited to have Braden today. Welcome, Braden.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So how are you? How's everything?
Good, keeping busy. As you mentioned, I was working for Sony Pictures. Now I'm at Disney. I've been at Disney for probably a month and a half. So keeping busy with new job and easing into that world of Disney animation and a new project.
That is very, very exciting. And I imagine that right now it's like different workflows at different companies, which is something that maybe some of the people that listen to a podcast have heard about. But do you find it really different in terms of the type of environments that you encounter in, say, a post-production house, an animation studio?
Yeah, it's a bit different. So working for Sony, we did both visual effects projects, like live action visual effects and animated projects. And Sony Pictures Imageworks is a vendor for client companies like Marvel, and even Disney was one of their client companies. And so now working for Disney, like we don't have a client side and a vendor side. We're all kind of just one team. So that's been a really nice change. And I'm working for Disney Animation Studio. So it's just been animated projects, which is really, really fun and rewarding.
Oh, I imagine that has to be like, a little bit of connecting with that inner child and just having,
Yeah.
that joy of like making part of the things that made up your world and your first probably exposures to media.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's wild that I'm either encountering people directly and working with them, or seeing them on different teams at work, or I'm seeing names and it's like they've worked on projects that were formative in childhood, or like ones that I watched as a child. So it's really cool. It's full circle.
Oh, that is so great. I love hearing stories like this. And maybe I didn't do a great introduction of explaining. So you're a supervisor in Disney at the moment. So you're more
Mhm.
on the side of production, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's more like project management, overseeing departments and making sure that the project and movies stay on track.
That is fantastic. And so some of you might know that that is kind of the background that I also come from. So production, project management. But I want to dive deep into how did you like first find out that you wanted to work in media, in film, and a little bit of going back and connecting that story of your inner child and satisfying that like beautiful full circle that is seeing media, making it part of who you are, and then just making part of it.
Yeah, it's actually it's been a journey. And like as a kid, like I didn't necessarily know I wanted to work in movies, or didn't even really know it was an option. I grew up in like a small town called Fort St. John in northern BC, Canada. So it was fairly like rural. There's maybe 20,000 people as the population. It was isolated from other bigger cities. Like you'd have to drive for hours to get anywhere um, bigger with more people or more to do. Um, but I knew I loved to create, and I loved to do art. And I did that growing up all through school and high school. And then um, classic teenager, when you're coming to graduation, you don't really know what you want to do. And so I thought, okay, well, let's at least do a couple years in art and get an art diploma. And then that turned into finishing an art degree. So I have a BFA in film, video, and media from Emily Carr, which is where I met you. And I started in Red Deer, Alberta, my art education, and I went there because I had friends there that I lived with, and I went to school there. So it started out as traditional art, like painting, design, drawing, ceramics, the basics that you have to start in. And then I moved to Vancouver to finish pursuing my degree. And I initially transferred into photography because I was doing that as well, just sort of in my spare time, kind of dipping my toe into that world. And like getting family or friends to just like pose for photos for me if I had any like ideas or concepts, and learning just how to use the cameras that I had access to. And so I moved to Vancouver, BC to finish my degree. I started in photography, and then being in a bigger city, I was introduced to a world of film, and there was always lots of filming going on. And I ended up working as a background actor on sets. And so I worked on different movie projects, TV, that sort of thing. And I realized, like, wow, this is a busy industry here in Vancouver. There's like lots going on. This is really fun. I didn't necessarily think like, oh, I want to, just do background acting, but I thought, hey, I could actually maybe do something behind the scenes, either with cameras or lighting or audio. And so then that's when I transferred my major from photography into film, video, and media. And then that was really fun. We got to do all of our, self-produced and directed projects, as you know, and it opened a world of experimental practices in the film world where I made film dresses out of film strip. And then, so coming out of my degree, I was determined to just like stay in Vancouver and work. Because typically I would have gone back to my hometown and worked for the summers, but I was determined. I was like, this is my grad year. I'm gonna stay put. I'm gonna find a job and try and get into film. And I did. I luckily did. I found a job at MPC, which stands for Moving Picture Company, and I started as a runner there. So I did that for 3 months, and that was basically just like a facility type assistant, getting lunch and coffee and cleaning and all the grunt work. And then I've just learned along the way, and from there I moved up to being a production assistant, and then a production coordinator, and then I moved over to Sony Pictures Imageworks, and then I moved up, and then I was a senior coordinator, and then I became an associate production manager, and now I moved over to Disney where I'm a production supervisor. So it's been a ride, but it's been a great learning journey.
That is so great. And I think that one of the things that I love highlighting about it is that every single story of people that are in this media world happens so differently. There's a lot of kind of chance involved in it. There's a lot of like, I wanted to do this and I went the other way. But you have to say that you are definitely one of the most successful people from that graduation year. And
thank you.
I don't know, it almost doesn't seem like chance and luck, because it's kind of like a very niche job and direction to go into. But it definitely is, I think you have a vision and you pursue that vision, you take steps towards it. And one thing that I always kind of try to say to people, and I try not to glamorize it too much, because there's always, like in media, there's the jobs that you start at usually are either free, so you don't get paid, or you get paid and you do a lot of things that you don't love doing. So you often have to be a runner, or often have to do cleaning, or a lot of the production assistants, say on set, for example, sit down in a parking lot for hours and days. And it can be a little bit soul crushing at first. I totally admit to that. But I would love for you to tell people like what you thought maybe at first and how you are seeing it now from the other side.
Yeah, well, it's a great point that you like mentioned that, is because like I did do free photography events or free um, film projects or something. Um, and then as a runner, my first job in the industry, like I was making minimum wage, and this was years ago, so it was like not a lot of money. And
Mhm.
so, but I did what I could and what I had to do. So I was every week I was working overtime. I never worked a 40-hour week. So I was working overtime to just like earn enough. And then with that came free meals. So
Yeah.
it's like you kind of have to um, do what you have to do to like get through that rough phase. And looking back on it, it's it was valuable, and it definitely was a lot of hard work. But I think during those times when I was a runner or when I was a PA, I always sort of tried to keep my mindset on, the next steps ahead, or like what was I learning, or what did I need to learn, and to get to that next position or that next role or a new project or a new studio. Um, and it's led me to Disney. And so it's I think it's good to keep your eyes on a goal or a target. And looking back, it was worthwhile. So it taught me a lot, and it allowed me to learn everything on my own, and with support of my peers, of course, in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's like a little bit of being humble and having a vision. Maybe the analogy that I would make there, it's you have to show your worth in this industry, but you also have to know your worth. So it's
Yeah, hugely.
finding that fine balance between the things that you do for free and the things that you do that are difficult, and knowing when to walk away from those things, because I also know that it can be really easy to get stuck in the doing free stuff for people all the time, right?
Yeah, and like, I mean, I I kind of had this mindset of like I'll do things for free while
Mhm.
I was a student, like while I was in university, because that was my learning period. And I mean, even maybe a couple of years into my career in film, but then it got to a point later where I had stronger portfolios in my professional artistic practice, or I had more experience in the film industry or in creative industries, where if I, to be honest, people would have approached me for like a free thing or free work, and the answer was kind of just no, because now I'm more established and I've learned what I've needed to do. And your project, while it may look or sound very cool and great to do, but it might not add to my creative portfolio. It might not add to my work experience, because I might have already done that actually. So I don't
Mhm.
need to do that for free because I'm not learning how to do that.
That's absolutely true. And I think that when you choose what you do for free, which is an interesting topic, there's like you either believe in the project and you're dying to do it, right? Or
Yes.
you're trying to learn something or get some networking out of it. And it sounds really transactional, but in a
Hmm.
way, it's time, and time is limited. So you really
Yeah.
have to be very decisive about that kind of thing. But also, there's like the point that you can love a project and believe in a project and still get paid. And
Hmm.
I always invite people to also like think about, you know, is the person that you're working with in a position to pay you? Because at the end of the
Yeah,
day, like cinematographers of the best films in the world got paid to do the films, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes with experience, and it's great if you are passionate and you love a project, and if you are willing to do it unpaid, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you need to earn a living, and you need to have your value seen.
For sure. That definitely is aligned with the way that I think. And I think a lot of people in the industry get to think that way. It's a constant struggle. But
Hmm.
definitely one thing to have shared with people. And thank you so much for opening about that, because I think a lot of people
Yeah, of
try not
course.
to talk about that development phase, or just talk about it in like a very negative way that doesn't encourage people to get into the world.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think people who want to get their foot into the creative world or media world, um, it's not like a negative mindset. Like it's just it's something that, you might go through a period where you're maybe not in a position or a place where you think you want to be or where you think you should be at the time, but you also have to remember that like your own journey is not the same as anyone else's. And I've
Exactly.
definitely had to remember that and remind myself of that throughout the years as well. Like maybe someone seems like they're a step or two ahead, but maybe they started earlier. Maybe they are just on a different journey than you. Maybe they've had different opportunities or taken on different projects, or vice
Yeah.
versa. Maybe you feel like you're ahead of people who should be in the same position as you.
Yeah, it is a really difficult one. I think in comparison in this media world, some people have taken a lot of jobs that they've hated over the years and they've got somewhere, like
Yeah.
I know a lot
Hmm.
of people that well, in the industry, just a little bit of an analogy. There's people that go into camera work, for example. So some people go into MOWs where they are getting paid very little and often, not always, doing work that they don't love, right?
Hmm.
But they're not getting paid union wages, but they move really fast to be camera operators or DPs, and
Yeah.
then they are able to enter IATSE as like the union as
Hmm.
operators to work in great shows. Whereas some people from the beginning say, I want to be paid a fair wage. And so it takes a little bit more time sometimes to get there. It obviously has a lot to do with the network that you make and the people that trust you. But I'll leave that one in a parenthesis because it's all about you today. But I wanted to hear a little bit about how you balance as well all of your work in, say, all of these companies, so Disney and Sony, with your art making, because at the end of the day, people forget that producers are also creatives, and you are
Hmm.
definitely one of the most creative and eclectic people I've ever met. Like,
Oh, thank you.
you make amazing art, very, like, I love your use of pop culture, and I just would love to hear about how you balance that time split.
Yeah, so it's kind of actually why I've stayed in sort of the project management stream of things, because people have asked me like, oh, well, why don't you get into doing like the animation or doing the lighting, doing the creative work in the industry that I work full time in? And my answer is always, well, I enjoy being in this world of animation and film and media, but I don't want like my full-time job or focus to be the creative aspect of my life. I want to be a part of the world and help create these projects, but I don't want to do the necessarily the creative work in those worlds, because I
Mhm.
want to leave that for my private practice and my personal work, because I want to still have like a creative brain, I guess, over in my own life so that I can create my own work and still have passion for creating and not, I guess, not necessarily feel burnt out if I was doing it full time on project or on other people's projects, kind of,
Mhm.
because you might be passionate about a project, but it's still at the end of the day, it's a screenwriter's project or a director's vision.
Mhm.
Whereas keeping it to my personal practice, it's all mine.
Yes, I love that. I think that that is like very much the essence of what I've seen in your work. And I think that your work, I have to say, I am just like, I love your use of pop culture.
Oh, thank you.
I'm fascinated by it. I have to say,
Yeah.
like, I don't see a lot of people um like dive into it anymore. Like maybe at some point people were doing it, but I would love to actually hear, first of all,
Yeah.
the story of how you went into a class of filmmaking with film and you ended up
Yeah.
making a dress out of film and how that ended up in a museum.
Yeah, so that was at Emily Carr, and that was like it was an experimental practices course, and um, like I didn't even really know much about it, but I was like, this is a course that can supplement my degree. It seemed like it was a fairly open like curriculum for the class, and it was an idea I actually had like a year or two before, but I didn't think I'd be able to necessarily get a chance to do it anytime soon. I thought, oh, maybe later in life. I don't really know how I'm going to do this project yet. I don't know what world would need a project like this or where I could do it. And so then because it was so open-ended, I decided to use film strip instead of a projected media and use it as structural medium, because film strip, we always just think of it being a movie. It's projected, you watch the light that is passed through the film strip, but you don't actually pay attention necessarily to the film strip itself. And so then that's when I built Marilyn Monroe's dress out of film strip. The ivory one she wore in the 7-Year Itch, I think everyone knows that image, and that was just an image that had always stuck out to me as like the image of pop culture or the image of Hollywood. And so I built that dress out of film strip, and it was made to her measurements. It was wearable. It has a zipper and a buckle. And so I did that project in 2015, and I had a friend in Vancouver who had sort of an oddities antique shop, and she allowed me to showcase the dress in her shop because it was also a shop, again, related to film. A lot of filming happened there, TV shows, movies, directors would come in and out, people would buy props for sets, location scouts would come in and contract her space for use in their projects. And so she was like, oh, this would be perfect. Like, it'd be so cool for all these film creatives to see this project that I did. And so I displayed it there. And of course, lo and behold, people were coming in and seeing the dress, loving the dress, wanted to buy it, but like it wasn't priced. She didn't know the price. I didn't know what it would be worth because I was like, this is a dress made of film strip. Like, I haven't seen anything like that. And so she asked, like, well, if you do want to consider selling it, like, think of a price, we could put a price on it, and I could sell it through the shop if you want. And so I began that journey, and that led me to just contacting Marilyn Monroe collectors, just like of her real clothes and real dresses, but like actual fabric dresses. And out of the few I contacted, one had gotten back to me who I've stayed in contact with, and as a friend, and he was kind of this same mindset. He was like, well, I don't know what something like this would be worth because I've never seen something like this, or like, you know, dresses don't exist being made out of film strip. So he didn't even know what the price would be, but he did say, I'm friends with, and I have a contact who's the owner of the Hollywood Museum, and they're going to be doing a Marilyn exhibit this coming summer, and I'm showing my personal collection there, and I'd love to get you in touch. And so that got the ball rolling. I got in connection with the owner of the Hollywood Museum, and they ended up offering me a spot in their exhibit alongside Marilyn Monroe's costumes. So they shipped my dress down. They actually valued it for me and insured it. And then they shipped it back at the end of the exhibit. So, I mean, even full circle, that's kind of back to like doing free work. That was a free exhibit that I did, but it was so valuable to me and so worthwhile. And the expenses for shipping and everything and having the dress up was covered. I didn't have to pay anything. I did go down and see it, but it opened up a whole new world because then that turned into my grad project the following year, where I built 2 more dresses, Audrey Hepburn and Judy Garland. And so I had exhibited those 3 for my grad show. And since then I've exhibited one of them in a different art show here locally in Vancouver last summer, which was queer focused actually. And it was sort of under the lens of the queer term friend of Dorothy and how that was sort of gay slang in the 80s, back when, you know, people couldn't openly identify as queer. You could ask someone if they were a friend of Dorothy, and that was a sign to say, yeah, I'm a gay person, or I'm a gay woman, or a lesbian, or a queer person, or bi, or whatever it may be. That was how you could identify as a gay person in secret. You were a friend of Dorothy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, on the one hand, I wanted to just highlight one thing about what you were just sharing before. It's so important to have, in a way, an entrepreneurial mind and to know the worth of your work. Again, you didn't know exactly what your dress was worth it. And you could have said, oh, you know what, I got this film strip at school or something, and this is how many hours, and this is at how much I will charge you for my work per the hour, right? Which is quite intuitive, because that's the way that the world values most of the skills and the jobs. But I think you had the right instinct to try to understand the value of what you were doing, firstly. And
Mm-hmm.
secondly, which for me is kind of like the most important thing, is you were able to go and make a call or send an email, contact someone, and didn't stay behind a desk trying to just like be scared. Like making
Mm-hmm.
those connections and that network is what like really catapults people into having a career and being able to do something more with the great work that they do.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you like point that out, like that the world does work in that way where it's kind of a labor mindset, right? It's like, okay, how many hours did you do on this? What would you charge per hour? Boom, there's your total for a piece or something. But in the art world, it's not necessarily that case, right? It's even now, they're still one of my favorite projects, or my film dresses, but I haven't seen anything since that's like it. So it has more of a value, not only to me, but I think in the world. Um, and even an instructor we had in university, I remember telling me, like, seeing my first film dress, they said, you gotta, basically you have to make this go viral because someone's gonna rip this off. And that kind of lit a fire under my butt and allowed me to start contacting these people and making those connections. And I had it copyrighted as well. So now I have a copyright for it. And yeah, you really have to value yourself and remind yourself that the value of your work and your pieces aren't necessarily just down to like the hours you put into it. It could be how it exists in the world, how others are seeing it, and the value it brings to that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some other value that you're bringing into the world, into narrative and into creative, and that I know
Mhm.
you're a huge advocate for it, and it's LGBTQ rights. And
Yeah.
I really believe that you are definitely outspoken about, say, like ending transphobia and a lot of the cases that are very unjust that are happening in the world. And you
Mhm.
were just mentioning having been in the in the exhibition. So I would like for you to maybe talk to us a little bit about what you think is the value of media and communication in making a change in that space.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely it starts a discussion, right? Visual media and art is such a huge part of the world, whether people realize it or not. It's in music, it's in movies, it's in graphic design, it's in marketing, it's in writing and literature. And so having like queer representation is so important. And not only just as a human, but as a gay man myself, like I have grown up as a teenager having either trans friends or non-binary friends or other gay friends, um, and still do to this day in adulthood. And it's back 10 years ago, I would have hoped that now in 2023 we'd be a little bit further along, and we are in many cases, for LGBT rights. But then you think of things happening in the world and down in the US where there are bills going in that are anti-gay and anti-trans and even anti-woman and like anti-women's healthcare. Um, and it just feels like um, certain groups are trying to erase minority representation, and I feel like media and art can help kind of counteract that,
Mhm.
in a certain way, and help fight that fight, I guess. And Um, one of my projects from last summer, which I might actually exhibit again this summer, is um, a neon sign that I called Possess, and it's cursive writing of mine, and it spells out pride, and then it's a reflection ambigram. So when it's flipped, or yeah, when it's flipped, or like I also printed it on clothing. So one way it'll say pride, but then the person looking in the mirror, it says love backwards.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was just even like a subtle way for me to like exude pride, but then when someone looks in the mirror, it reminds them of self-love.
Mhm.
Um, and I used that project and I exhibited that last summer and did sort of this marketing campaign for all this merchandise, and donated 50% of the proceeds to Rainbow Railroad, um, which is an organization that helps queer refugees coming to Canada, and helps fund them and set up their new life and bring them to safety. So art and media plays a huge part in that, and I think representation is important because it shows the world like we're not going anywhere, and it helps normalize queer people. We've always been normal. We are normal, but it helps the majority see that the minority is also included in this big melting pot. And I think it's helped change the conversation about gay people or trans people as not being a punchline, like not a punchline in a TV show or movie. We're not a joke. We can be leading characters. We can be everything you are and more,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting thing what you were saying about the punchline or whatever in media and the spot that things are taking.
Mhm.
I wanted to get your thoughts on something. It might be a little bit polemic. And I, as always, say to people, this is creating conversation around different things and different topics. And that I think it's where this podcast exists. But I've been noticing quite a bit in terms of diversity. A lot of shows are introducing like a random character that is LGBTQ, and then
Yeah.
another one that is maybe of color, and then, but it almost doesn't seem like any stories are still about them. It's almost like you just haven't realized that there's stories that they need to be told, and they're trying to meet a little bit of quota. What is your feeling around that? Do you think that that contributes in a way still, or do you think that it kind of takes away?
It's a little bit of both. I think it comes with like, I guess, good intention, I want to say, but also a little bit like you just mentioned is like trying to hit that quota or trying to, meet the inclusive quota so that a project may seem very diverse. But until I think there are just as many projects that have BIPOC people in a leading role or a queer person in a leading role as there are that have a white person or a straight or a cishet person in the leading role. I think until there is that balance, it's like we still need to be pushing against that, and we still need to be fighting for representation, because it's like I think we've sort of changed the mindset that queer people are not a punchline, but we're still sort of stuck in like a background or a supporting sort of character in stories. And I've even been in situations or on projects where it is kind of like a little bit like a quota, but I think there's more genuine mindset and effort put into it. Only in this instances I've been in, where leaders of a project might have been like, no, we need more diverse characters, or we need more skin tones, or we need even subtle things like we're going to put like a pride button on this character or a trans flag in the background of this shot, or whatever that might mean. But yeah, I think we definitely can use more visibility, and even more frequent visibility, not necessarily as subtle.
Yeah, and definitely meaningful, I think, as well, is what we were talking about like, making these characters come to life and not just being like visible, but without a sound, without a voice in a story.
It's like almost like too subtle. Like they want to make a character queer, but they don't want them to be too obviously queer, right? They want them to just be, it'll be subtly, we might allude to something, or we might have a lesbian couple in the background, but like I think we need to push those boundaries and represent in a leading way.
Yes, for sure. I think so too. I definitely see how, there's like a change and then a little bit of reluctance to change, and sometimes a little bit of like very good intention in what's being done, but maybe not doing enough. And we are all part of that, same as myself, right? But it's starting these conversations and really starting to think about it that makes a difference.
Yeah.
So do you have any films that you want to recommend, or I don't know, music videos, anything that occurs to you that you're like, these I think nails representation or
Ooh.
starts a conversation that's very powerful? Is there any piece that you can recommend to people right now? Because I know a lot of people are here because they want to get some
Yeah.
recommendations.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably tons out there, but one I can think of is a show called Please Like Me, and it's on Netflix. Um, and it deals with a lot of topics, actually. It deals with like um, queer discovery and queer acceptance. It deals with like mental health. It deals with reproductive rights. It deals with so many things. And I think it's a very well done show. It's kind of like a dark comedy, but I think it's a great place to start if people did want to see more realistic representation too, right? It's not always necessarily about rainbows and smiles and the happy stories. It's about showing the hardships as well.
And I have to say that today, funny enough, is Pride in Birmingham. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
I just actually, as you were saying that, I was just thinking about that. It's actually Pride here. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, it's a good coincidence actually. But
Mhm.
I actually hadn't heard about this show. I have to say that for a filmmaker, I watch very little films and very little
Yeah.
TV these days.
I'm
because
kind of the same way. I feel like sometimes I'm a bad like filmmaker because I don't watch a lot of things.
yeah.
But I guess it's because we keep busy with other projects, right? So
Yeah. And you get saturated a little bit about like just
yeah.
seeing media all the time moving in front of you. But I will definitely take a look at that. And I think that, like, yeah, I really don't understand how I haven't heard about this show. It's
Yeah.
one of those things. It's like, why?
Well,
Like,
exactly
why is
right.
it not
It's
like advertised as heavily? I'm not
yeah,
sure. Maybe I
because
missed the advertisement, but I did not see it on Netflix so far. So
yeah. Well, it's an older show, but it's a good point that you have is like projects kind of like that or like queer stories, they're not necessarily marketed as much, right? Like they kind of remain niche.
yeah,
You have to search for them.
definitely. I think that definitely is the case. Um, yeah. Yeah, I think that those are things that we need to overcome as an industry, and
Hmm.
also as a society. I think that a lot of the time, say, um, heterosexual people, when they are first exposed to, like, say, teasing sins of people, like queer people, right,
Hmm.
can feel a little bit uncomfortable because it's something that they have never seen before. And this might
Yeah.
happen younger, this might happen older. But I just think that it's so important to just be able to see this. Like I actually this week on the train, I am a people watcher, low key.
Oh, same.
And I was like in front of this couple, and I feel like they looked like friends for the most part. And then
Hmm.
it was two women. And then one starts like very subtly caressing the other person's arm, and like in a way that was almost like private to not be seen.
Hmm.
And when I saw that, there was a part of me that was like, would this person be more affectionate in public in a different
Yeah.
situation? But at the same time, it just gave me so much warmth that it's like, people still are finding that they are safe to start like displaying more affection in public,
Hmm.
and especially in spaces that are not like your queer bar or your queer spaces or your queer
Yeah.
festivals and stuff like that. I think that is so important because you guys are such an important part of our society, and just to
Hmm.
see these not just in media or in specific spots, it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. And it is important. And like representation doesn't just normalize our existence, but it helps normalize our safety.
Yeah.
And it's a good point you mentioned is that maybe that that queer couple, like they were being very subtle because you never know who might be around. They might, approach you, or you might be in a dangerous situation. And it circles back to the friend of Dorothy term. And I even was chatting with gay friends last night, and one brought up something I didn't even know. And it was that similarly to friend of Dorothy, there's like a little symbol that queer women would get tattooed on their wrist. But it was so small and subtle that it could be hidden with like a watch or something, right? So if they were in a situation where they needed to hide, unfortunately, they could hide that symbol, but then it was also alternatively they could, reveal it if they felt they were in a safer situation. And it was that sort of subtle representation that let other people know, like, I'm a queer person, or I'm a safe person to be around.
Yeah, that is it's those stories are very interesting, at the same time kind of sad to hear that
Yeah.
people have gone through this. I have a friend that has recently, a trans friend that has recently been assaulted,
Oh no.
which is
Yeah.
definitely like, it's hard to be on the other side and not even know how to approach, how to help.
Mhm.
That's a whole nother story. But
Yeah.
like, I think that we don't even think that we're going to be in situations like these with our friends, with our family. So it's really, really important that all of us become really aware, and that, as filmmakers and as media or artists, it's important that we start paving the way so this space might be safer as well for the community.
Yeah, of course, right? It's like it's preparing ahead of any sort of situation where someone could be in danger, or um, discriminated against. And it's a good point you said, is like all sort of creatives and filmmakers or producers and project managers should be continuing and starting to pave the way. And especially, I think even cisgender or heterosexual allies should be a part of that, right? Like we're all one community, even as allies. And it shouldn't necessarily always now be, left to the gay men or women or trans people who have to do it.
Yeah, I definitely think that. And yeah, I wish that I had more exposure so I knew how to help better other people, for example. But okay, I'm going to move on to the last
Okay.
closing questions, because I know that we're a little bit tight on time, and I always want to just keep going. This conversation is so
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, podcasting is like, you have to find that sweet spot.
Time limit.
But this has been lovely, and for me, really, really, like, thought-provoking.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for being so open.
Of course.
Here on
Thank
the
you
podcast.
for the great discussion.
Okay, so I'm gonna close with basically 3 questions that's
Okay.
very lighthearted, puts you on the
Okay.
spot, quick thinking. Okay,
Okay.
so if you had to give yourself, your younger self, little bit of advice to navigate
Mhm.
this media world, what would you say? What would you tell yourself to do differently, or what advice would you give yourself?
I would say try more things, or like dive deeper into the things that did interest you as a youthful person. um I feel like as people mature and navigate their youth and going into adulthood, it's kind of a fast lane. Like you're trying to figure out the entire world and where you fit in it or what you want to do, but sometimes we don't take enough time to figure out the things that interest us. I would just say, like, dive deeper into certain projects or niches or films that do interest you.
For sure. For sure. I think that, I have been on a similar situation, but different. I dove into everything,
Yeah.
but didn't stick with anything long enough. I
Yeah,
think,
see,
why did I give that away? I should have
I
given
kind
that
of did
away at
too,
some
though.
point.
It's
But
like
I think,
I did painting, ceramics, drawing, photography,
yeah.
film. Like I did a lot of different things, but
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I should have stuck with some things for a little bit longer. Like I just kind of got like a little bit insecure and like quit. or move
Right.
to the next thing. But I am like that in life, like just
Yeah.
come to sense with that.
Well, it all adds to your life and your creativity. So
For sure. I think that that's the nature of the creatives, a little bit of exploration. All
mhm.
right. So an art piece, similar to what we said before, but just any topic, an art piece or film or music or installation, anything, but you're like, I really just want to talk about this with people and I want people to go see it.
Ooh. Um, that's a tough one. An art piece,
A song, anything.
anything creative. Um, I would actually like. It's not even. It's a new album. It's Kesha's new album called Gag Order. I think
Yes.
that came out today, and I've listened to it a few times, and I think it's really beautiful and really well written, and addresses um, a lot of mental health and
Mhm.
problems relating to abuse.
Definitely. I saw this on your Instagram because you can be up to date with the world actually.
Oh,
So
absolutely. You can just watch people's stories and you're caught
yeah,
up.
but definitely, you know what? When she was like, she was singing some song and she's like making that coffee. I have to say
Mhm.
that was like subtle and creative and great. And then I'm like, I just really need to listen to this album. So now that you're saying, I'm gonna go listen to it
Yeah,
after
and
this while I do homework.
it's like it's it's like sometimes I want like an album to be longer, but like this one doesn't seem like it needs to be. It's only 40 minutes. So it's like you can turn it on start to finish and in under an hour you've listened to it. And I think it's really cohesive and new and interesting. And the lyrics are really beautiful
And meaningful, right?
and meaningful. Yeah.
And if people haven't heard what has happened to Kesha, because I feel like it kind of was public, but almost flew under the radar. So go look
Yeah.
into it online. The
Well, I think because
issues she's
people
had.
think it, like when it kind of got to public eye, I think people thought as soon as it sort of went under the radar, I think people thought it was like dealt with and
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
But
Or
it's,
fake news or something. Yeah.
yeah, but it's been going on now for all these years,
Yeah.
just behind the scenes.
Yeah. Absolutely horrendous. And go look into it if you guys haven't, because
Yeah,
it's horrifying. Definitely like free Britney kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And okay, now this one is a little bit weird as well. This one is the
Okay.
weirdest. I have to admit, this is the weirdest. Okay.
We love weird.
We love weird. Actually, you and I made a film about that one store, Salmagundi West. I just remember.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was the store that had my film dress in it.
Yes. So very quirky store in Vancouver. And a little bit weird, but we love
Mhm.
weird. So
Yeah.
if you could watch movies from one country, and for you, I'll extend it to one topic only
Ooh,
for a whole
okay.
month. Is only one
For
topic
a
or
whole
one
month.
country. What would it be?
Okay. Um, if it was one topic, I would focus on queer films.
Yes.
But what and I'd want to see more queer stories, and I would love to just spend a month watching that. And if it was one country, it would probably be like I think it'd be Italy. Like I just remember there was like an Italian film called The Bicycle Thief that I watched
Mhm.
in school, and I really enjoyed it. So I'd want to see more films like that.
Yeah, they have some beautiful films. And we sometimes think about Italian films and it's a little bit like, the girl goes to Rome and falls in love.
Yeah,
Which I have to
yeah,
say I love. I love the Sabrina one. I love the one from like
yeah,
Lizzie McGuire. I loved all of that. But
yeah. Right.
Italian film has some beautiful stories from the
Hmm.
war, from old people as well, and from the villages. And it's not all like mafia and eat, pray, love
Exactly
kind of
right.
stories.
It's not just like the cliche.
Yeah, totally. Totally. All right. Are there any closing remarks or anything else that you're like, I want to say it. I need to say it in public.
What should I say? Ooh, I'll plug my next movie, I can't talk about what I'm working on right now, but I can tell you my last project at Sony Pictures Imageworks is out in 2 weeks from today. I worked on Across the Spider-Verse, which is the
What?
sequel to the Oscar-winning Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah, so that's out in
Oh,
2 weeks.
very exciting. And I actually didn't know that. And I
Oh, there we
freaking
go.
loved it. I cried so much.
Yeah,
It
the
was like
first one was so good.
sobbing. I was sobbing with the first one, so I'm gonna go watch the second one. And I am very proud of you because
Thank you.
we
Yeah,
were
we upped the
planning.
ante on this one. Like it's beautiful. It's so cool. There's so
Am
many
I gonna
different styles
cry?
in it.
Am I gonna cry?
Maybe. I think you'll really appreciate all the different art styles. Like the first one had kind of like one art style.
Mhm.
This one has like I don't even know, multiple. Every different like world they're in has a different art style.
Okay, I'm gonna go watch that. I'm gonna wear waterproof mascara just in case. You
Yeah,
know,
there you go.
it
Bring some
might
tissues.
come in handy.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming here and
Well, thank you for the
sharing your
invite.
story, bringing awareness, and yeah, just being so honest and so open today.
Yeah, well, thank you again, and thank you for the great discussion. It's so nice to see you again and connect.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.